Sampayetia. Obayan Sapuso Bunia one kana sam. They mafu to some kakre wa supeme. Yo coffee, oh my ya woman. Oh mani ya mana. Deni baby ako. Wacha da ya waren. Ponsom, wani pa. Asa depa wo fio ye. Demo embera ye.
Good evening, fellow citizens. Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Social Digest. Your thought-provoking, your number one social dialogue. Your non-partisan social dialogue. Brought to you by CORE, Congress of Reform and Ethics. Presented by your one and only senior citizen, Godwin Ajate. Folks, what are we digesting today? A topic that we've been struggling with. As a nation. Because it has, for the large majority of the people, has been misconceived. And is democracy. What is your understanding of democracy, folks? Is it freedom of speech, as we normally used to say in a local dialect, kebi nami kebi, yumonama yueko? Is it? Or the plebiscite way of choosing people for public office? Or the voting way of choosing people for public office? You know, when the officials keep on misbehaving and there are a whole lot of corruption, then they say, you bit too. Kukromoti power. Democracy money one. Kukromoti power, you bit too. Or is it a system of accountability? What is democracy? Is it the freedom of speech or the plebiscite way of choosing people for public office, or a system of accountability? To really understand what democracy is, let us look at its emergence. Folks, let's look at its emergence. Way back in the city of Athens, a model of governance was adopted, and the main tenet of such a model, such a system, is to ensure accountability in rendering public services to the people of Athens. That is the belief of such a system. The main tenet is to ensure accountability in rendering public services to the Athenians and for the well-being of the Athenians. Also, to prevent a small group of people from total control of the nation's wealth and living like demigods at the expense of the entire nation. This is the ideology. This happens to be the belief of such a system in the city of Athens. When they decided to adopt this system, these are what the system is to achieve, is to ensure accountability in rendering public services to the people of Athenians and for the well-being of Athenians. Also to prevent small group of people from total control of the nation's wealth, living like demigods at the expense of the entire nation. So the adopted system was named democracy. The adopted system was named democracy, which is the people rule. Power to the people. The people rule. To achieve the tenet of democracy, the people must be given the right to express their opinion on matters. To achieve it, the people must be given the right to express their opinion on matters and to be given the right to choose individuals or a group who will remain dutiful to matters and challenges that they are confronted with. And this is how freedom of expression and plebiscite way of choosing public officials came into being. Freedom of expression and the plebiscite way of electing our public official in themselves are not democracy. They are not. The fact that we go and vote and we choose public officials and we were given the freedom of expression, folks, they are not democracy, but the modalities expressed in the adopted system of governance known as the Constitution to achieve the tenet of democracy. These are the modalities. Freedom of expression and the plebiscite way of choosing our public officials are the modalities, okay, in the system to achieve democracy. Folks, they are the modalities to achieve democracy. In other words, democracy is equity in what? Governance. A system that holds people accountable for their actions and prevent them from living like demigods. And prevent them from living like what? Demigods. Folks, so examples of demigods are, number one, a dictator, meaning a ruler who has complete power over the country. This is an example of demigod, a dictator, a ruler who has complete power over the country, over the entire country. The next demagogic system is oligarchy. Oligarchy, meaning a form of governance in which only a small group of people holds all power. And the last one is monarchy, a system of governance by a king or queen. These are what, folks? These are what democracy is to prevent. It's to prevent dictatorship, a ruler who has complete power over a country. Oligarchy, a form of governance in which a small group of people holds all powers. And monarchy, a system of governance by a king or a queen. And it is what democracy is to prevent, which makes democracy a system of accountability in which all of us, all the people, are subject to that system. All the people, right from the presidency to the cleaner, to the laborer, to the chief executive, everybody happens to be subject to that particular system. Folks, democracy is definitely not freedom of speech or voting our public officials in public office as we were made to believe. It is not. So the fact that we have freedom of speech and then we have a way to vote, we have the plebiscite way to go and vote our public officials, okay? They are not democracy. This is the modalities to achieve democracy. Democracy is a system of accountability. So where there's democracy, there is effective accountability and every individual live responsibly. So therefore, if we largely, you can see that we live irresponsibly then it should tell you we do not have democracy. We don't have democracy. Let us examine, folks, what we are practicing. So let's examine what we are practicing and ascertain whether we are truly practicing democracy. A democratic system, folks, a democratic system, which is a system of accountability, constitutes three bodies to govern. That is how it is. Constitute three bodies to govern. These three arms of governance are the executives. They are the executive, parliament, and then the judiciary. The executives, which represent, folks, administrators of the capitals and the resources of the nation, and they are the tax workers for the country, the executive. That is why they are called the executive. They are the tax workers of the country. They are responsible. Okay, the name executive meaning you are responsible for the daily, duties of a country or of an organization. So the chief executive of all the executive is the person we call the president. He happens to be the chief executive. They are responsible of the affairs of the country. The other body is called what? Parliament, the MPs, representing our interests, the people's interests. They represent our interests, and they are the makers of the law that govern us, and they are also the supervisors of the executive. Folks, they are the supervisors of the executive. The judiciary represents the custodians or the mediators of the rules and the regulations that govern us as people. This arrangement is known as what? Check and balances. And it's a system which helps to keep it fair and stop a small group of people from keeping all powers. Check and balances. So this system is to help to keep it fair, level, equitably, okay, and stop a small group of people from keeping all powers. It's of this reason Parliament, folks, was mandated by the Constitution, by the framework, to scrutinize and approve, folks, scrutinize and approve the functions and the proposals of the executives. Approve here signifies is good and accepted, therefore being permitted to carry on, which also denotes the highest authority so far as governance in the country is concerned. So it is Parliament that holds the highest authority. Folks, the executive, on the other hand, must what? Assent, which is to agree or accept the proposal. Agree, approve, okay, and assent. And assent means to agree or accept a proposal. The Constitution went ahead and empowered the chief executive, who is the president we elect every 4 years, to appoint all the executives of the government. In order for him not to be autocratic or to have his or his party's personal interests not to outweigh our collective interests, the same Constitution empowered Parliament to scrutinize and permit, which is approve, his proposal before being executed by his administration. Also empower Parliament to act as an oversight body to check the functions of the President administration for us to have value for money pertaining to any project meant to alleviate our plight and for prosperous future. Because Parliament represents us, the people. Parliament represents our interests. Parliament is the embodiment of the whole country. Parliament is the embodiment of the whole country. But folks, per the practice, the executive hijacks the powers of what? Parliament. So the executives ends up, folks, they ends up approving to themselves, investigating themselves, report to themselves. And since the executives are the same people who appoints the Attorney General, who happens to be the chief prosecutor of the country, spelled out in the Constitution or by the Constitution, and the same Constitution failed to guarantee the independency of the chief prosecutor, what it means is that the executives were mandated to prosecute themselves. The executive were mandated to prosecute themselves. So this is what we are practicing. So folks, tell me, a system that allows a group of people to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and prosecute themselves where found liable. This very system is synonymous to a dictator. It's synonymous to a dictator. Folks, that gives you room to express your grievances while he aggrieves you the more. So you see what we are practicing, because what we are practicing, okay, the system we are practicing allow a small group of people to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and what? Prosecute themselves when found liable. This is synonymous to what? A dictatorship. The very system that democracy is to prevent. And it's equal to a dictatorship. That gives you room to express your grievances while he aggrieves you the more. And you can attest to it. Because there's no accountability. The only thing they allow us to express our grievances. And the more we express our grievances, the more they aggrieve us, the more. Because they are meant to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and prosecute themselves. This is it. This is it. The system is synonymous to a monarchy. This system is synonymous to a monarchy. So if you think we are practicing democracy, disabuse your mind from it. Folks, if you think we are practicing democracy, just for the fact that we have a plebiscite way of electing our public officials, okay, and we have freedom of expression, and you think we are practicing democracy, disabuse. What we are practicing, okay, are synonymous to the very thing democracy is to prevent. Preventing others to live like demigods. And one of them is what? A monarchy. Where a king's sons and his households, his household, friends and associates, okay, and his foot soldiers were automatically beyond reproach and apprehension because their father has been ordained a king. And this is what happened. Because we are practicing a system that the same people we entrust the affairs of the countries to happens to be the people to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and prosecute themselves. So it's synonymous. It's equal to a monarchy. That is why you find that anytime we elect a president, then the foot soldier, everybody that knows the president, that belongs to the president, they are beyond reproach and apprehension. You cannot hold them accountable. This system we are practicing is synonymous to what we call oligarchy, where a small group of people holds all powers to amass the wealth of the nation to the detriment of the majority. And you notice, we entrust Because they are the same people who approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and prosecute themselves when found liable. This is oligarchy. So if you think we are practicing democracy, disabuse your mind. Disabuse, folks, your mind. What we are practicing is oligarchy. It's oligarchy in disguise. It's a dictatorship in disguise, and it's a monarchy in disguise. We are not practicing democracy. Democracy, folks, is a system of accountability that ensures that we are all subject to the system. Tell me, if the very people that we entrust are subject to the system? No, they are above the system. They live like demigods, and we worship them. We are definitely not practicing democracy. The further we have freedom of speech and freedom of expression, the plebiscite way, folks, the plebiscite way, okay, the plebiscite manner of electing our public officials are not in themselves democracy, but part of the modality used to achieve democracy. When we go and vote to elect our public official, it's an endorsement. It's an endorsement of a system we have adapted as a people to be governed by. When we go and vote every 4 years, okay, it is not necessarily a decision between NPP, NDC, PMP, and whoever. It is an endorsement. It's just like walking into any organization, maybe in a banking hall, okay, for whatever it is, okay, or you want to invest your money with a bank, and they came with a document, a contract, and they placed a contract, okay, in front of you. The contention here is not between you and the person who placed a contract in front of you. The person who placed a contract in front of you to sign or to append your signature is a beneficiary of the contract, just as you are also the beneficiary of the same contract. So the contention here is the contract and you. So when you append your signature, it's an endorsement that let's carry on. So we voting every 4 years. It is not democracy. These are the modalities used to achieve democracy. They are the modalities used to achieve democracy. So if you think we are practicing it, disabuse your mind. It's just an accountability system. If you agree with me that majority of us live irresponsible in this country, then we are not practicing democracy. Then we are not practicing democracy. Folks, we are definitely not practicing democracy. Okay? Okay, as I said, when we go and vote, okay, to elect our public official, it's an endorsement of a system we have adapted as people to be governed by. Therefore, the actions and the reactions, okay, of the duty bearers, which happens to be the parties, whether good or bad, and their entitlement are based on the dictates of the system adapted. Are based on the dictate of the system adapted. Are based on the dictates of the system adapted. We constantly talk of what? Mediocrity. How do we expect parties to live up to expectation when they are the same people meant to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, and what? Report to themselves. We constantly talk of poor leadership. How do we expect good leadership when the people leading operates in a governance system that says they should be the same people to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and prosecute themselves? Knowing very well that as humans, folks, as humans, our actions and reactions are based on dictates of the environment we operate. Okay, so most of the time we talk of bad leadership, of course. Okay, bad leadership, of course. When people operate under such an environment, definitely, the leadership expected would definitely be of the corrupt nature. Of a corrupt nature. We constantly talk of lack of accountability. Folks, tell me, how do we expect the parties, the people we entrust, okay, the governance of the countries too, to be accountable when they are the same people to approve to themselves, investigate themselves, report to themselves, and prosecute themselves? How do we expect them to be accountable when they do not take the fall for their follies? How? You tell me. How? You see, in such a system, calling on the president to fight corruption is like calling on a pimp to fight prostitution. It's like calling on a pimp to fight prostitution. No wonder, folks, it has never, ever been effective. The fight on corruption in our country has never, ever been effective. And also, the executive tends to be much more irresponsible when the only formidable entity to critique and advise them happens to be their rivals. Folks, the so-called opposition. The gross irresponsibility of our government from one party to the other is no surprising. It is no surprising because you know why? It is because advice of a rival makes you much more irresponsible. If you want to be much more irresponsible, then get your rivals to advise you or critique you. This system is just not helping. It is just not helping. Folks, if you think we are practicing democracy, think again. Think again. The fact that we have freedom of expression and do exercise the plebiscite manner of electing and diselecting our public officials when they woefully perform does not represent democracy. Folks, the fact that we have a means of voting used to elect and diselect our public officials when they woefully perform does not represent democracy. Freedom of expression and plebiscite way of electing and diselecting our public officials are part of the modalities set to achieve democracy. They are the modalities. They are not in themselves democracy. Much as it's okay to exercise portions of the modalities in our governance system to change the parties after abysmal performances that caused us devaluations in our lives. Yes, devaluation that devaluates our living, and to posterity. It is much more prudent, folks. It is much more prudent. And I repeat, it is much more prudent to look at the system of governance that aid and abet the party's corrupt acts. Folks, it is prudent to look. So just as I said, you walk into a banking hall, you want to do any transaction, they brought to you an agreement, a contract form, and then you sign and you realize that no, whatever you signed happens not to go in your favor, and that the contractor happens to be the one what gaining all the time. You need to go back to the contract. We need to go back to the contract. But we are not looking at that direction because we are meant to believe that democracy is a plebiscite way of what? Voting. So the fact that we voted with exercise. Is it? No. No, folks. No. No. The fact that we voted so that we've exercised, the fact that we have freedom of so we should have freedom of expression and be expressing ourselves, expressing our grievances, why they aggrieves the more, and that is what is going on. And as I said, they are synonymous. To oligarchy system, they are synonymous. To the monarchy system, they are synonymous to what? A dictatorship system. Folks, to a dictatorship system. What is the solution here? The solution is to seek for independency of parliament and the bodies mandated to check on all of us. The solution is to seek especially the independency of parliament and the bodies mandated to check on all of us. Because folks, as individuals, as a people, as a family, or a company or a country, we are successful not because we are good at what we do or we have plenty of resources. We are successful because we are critical on what we do. Because we are critical on what we do. And being critical on what we do means making careful judgment, expressing disapproval when things goes wrong, and to take the appropriate measures to curb its reoccurrences. Taking things extremely important because a future situation will be affected by it. Folks, these are the primary function entrusted to Parliament, but to no avail. But to no avail, because the executive has always hijacked Parliament by the practice. So let us rethink Parliament. Let us rethink Parliament, folks. Let us rethink Parliament. Let me leave you with a quote. And this quote is by Thomas Jefferson. And in this quote, I took the liberty in replacing Americans with Ghanaians. Quotes: I predict future happiness for Ghanaians if they can prevent the government from wasting the labors of the people under the pretense of taking care of them. Folks, under the pretense of taking care of them. And you know, what we have now is a waste of our labor. Billions of money will be appropriated for stuff and it will go wasted. They will borrow billions and put it and it will go wasted. And we work for it. We pay through taxes. Let us rethink Parliament. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for listening.
Asampayetia Obayansa fuso wo bunye wankana asam Ze mafutu sam kakre wa asupeme Yo kofi Oman ya woman Omani ya memana Denyi baby ako Wata da ya wareni Bonsom Wanyinyi pa Asa dipa wofyo ye Yamo yembera ye Ebe ya Omaya umano Omaya memana Adiwaya no ra Yamita da Yamo yamberaye, ebe ya efriana.